Come with me as we explore Mexico City and all the books and bakes that this city has to offer. So my wife and I were recently in Mexico for a family wedding, and despite Mexico being my place of ethnic origin and also me spending significant portions of my life in the country itself, I've actually never properly explored its capital. Well, that changed this past week when my wife and I extended our stay in Mexico and actually explored CDMX for the first time ever. We spent about a week there and absolutely enjoyed our time in Mexico City. We got immersed in the culture, the food, the architecture, and of course, the books. We hit up some of the local bookstores while we were in the city and were absolutely enthralled with some of these places. My personal favorite of these bookstores was actually a place called Cafeteria El Péndulo, a bookstore that is kind of a hybrid between a cafe/restaurant and a bookstore, and it was pretty cool. There are 7 locations in all throughout Mexico City, and we explored a couple of them, but my personal favorite Cafeteria El Péndulo was the one located in the Roma neighborhood of Mexico City. This location was 4 stories and was just eye-catchingly gorgeous and an absolute treat to explore. Definitely recommend checking this place out if you're either in the Roma or Roma Norte area of Mexico City. They had titles specific to Mexican authors, titles specific to authors around the world, and it was just all really cool. They even had Spanish translations of works from some pretty notable authors, as you can see here from this snippet of this video here, including my personal favorite author, George R. R. Martin. I checked out this Spanish version of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms with this absolutely gorgeous cover, and I just could not resist buying, so I gave into temptation, and much to the chagrin of my limited bookshelf space, I went ahead and bought it. Hey, don't blame me. It's not my fault that the American versions of these books don't exactly have the most exciting covers. I will say though, despite the charm of this cafeteria, the price tags for some of these books weren't exactly as charming as this bookstore looked. Now, for books that are in their original language and imported into Mexico from other countries, or books that are translated into Spanish from said countries, I could understand the more expensive price tag, as it costs money to ship things, and it also costs money to pay someone to properly translate a text from a different country into Spanish. However, even books that were originally written by Mexican authors and published by local Mexican publishing companies, even those books were expensive. Small paperbacks for some of these books ran somewhere in the ballpark of a minimum of $20 and that's pretty pricey. I mean, I'm from Seattle, where the cost of living there is pretty expensive, but even there you can find similar paperbacks for $10. But I digress. Anyway, another really cool bookstore that we checked out during our time in Mexico City is this place called Librería El Sótano, a really cool bookstore that has kind of this grungy/underground feel to it, hence the name Sótano, which translates to basement from Spanish. It also has some really cool books and some Spanish translations of some very notable books that I already currently have on my bookshelf, but again, similar to Cafeteria El Péndulo, we also saw that the price tag might have been a little too high, which I guess can serve as a good reminder to you guys as viewers that your local libraries do indeed exist and they are indeed free, so should you ever find yourself unable to financially support your favorite author, you can always borrow books for free from your local library. Later that week, we also found ourselves in the Polanco neighborhood of Mexico City, a very upscale neighborhood within the capital city, and during our time here, we actually stopped by this very cute and tiny bookstore in Chapultepec Park called Librería Porrúa, and despite its small size, this tiny place packs a huge punch with shelves and shelves full of books, including this Spanish cover version of George R. R. Martin's Fire and Blood. I definitely made it my mission to find the Spanish translations of all the George R. R. Martin books I could at every bookstore I could find, but sadly, unfortunately, we arrived a little bit too late to Librería Porrúa, so as we arrived, they were kind of closing up shop, and it was a little bit disappointing that we couldn't properly explore this bookstore or the area much better, as the park itself, Chapultepec Park, which is really cool and actually double the size of New York City Central Park. We also couldn't explore that either, as they were closing the gates at around 6 p.m., but it was cool for the little time that we got a chance to explore. And yeah, I guess we'll just have to come back to Mexico City at a later date and do a more proper, thorough exploration of both the park and bookstore at an earlier time, much earlier before it closes. However, speaking of libraries, probably the coolest bookish type place that I went to during our time in CDMX was this amazing industrial kind of factory looking place in the Cuauhtémoc borough of the city called Biblioteca Vasconcelos. This vast and humongous library that consists of 8 stories worth of metal bookshelves was pretty damn impressive, and I couldn't help being in awe during my time at this library. I don't know how many books this place actually has, but you could easily spend an entire day here walking through as many bookshelves as you can, and you probably would not be able to completely do that within a day. It is that massive. During my time here, out of curiosity, I wanted to confirm if the Dewey Decimal System was something that was universal worldwide as opposed to something that was just unique to the libraries here in the United States, and sure enough, all the books here at Vasconcelos were categorized in that familiar classification system that we all know and love so well. And here's a little cheat code for you kids at home. Should you want to search for a George R. R. Martin book and are unsure where to go, you can always count on section 813. 8 for the number of books that George realistically needs to write in order to finish the A Song of Ice and Fire, because fitting it all in 7 books is delusional. And 13 for the 13 different release dates we've gotten on The Winds of Winter that have since all been proven wrong. Sad day. Regardless though, this place was super cool, and libraries back in the United States really need to step up in order to compete with this place, because this place definitely takes the cake for probably the coolest library I've ever been to. But besides seeing all the books, we also ate lots of delicious breads at Mexico City's incredible panaderias, including this amazingly delicious place called Panaderia Rosetta. Seriously, the conchas there were amazing. We also wanderlusted through the city itself, including seeing the Angel of Independence, hiking up the pyramids in Teotihuacan, and also exploring the National Museum of Anthropology. This entire city was an absolute treat, and we absolutely loved our time there. That said, if we ever do come visit the city again, I would probably come at a different time of year. Although we had a mostly enjoyable time in the city, our time did get impeded quite a bit by the rainy season. You see, Mexico City doesn't really have the traditional 4 seasons that other parts of the world have, but more so a rainy season and a dry season. And early June just happens to be the smack dab beginning of the rainy season. Meaning that there were indeed a couple of days there during the tail end of our journey that the rains did happen to put a damper on our fun. But regardless, it was still a good time, and I think if I were to come again, I would come in either late February, early March when the jacaranda flowers are in full bloom, or in early November when the Dia de los Muertos / Day of the Dead celebration is taking place throughout the entire city. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that our time in Mexico City also happened to coincide with the time right before the World Cup actually began. Mexico City, being one of the host cities for the World Cup, was actually going all in on the World Cup festivities during our time there, and it was really cool to be part of that environment. And although I would have loved to have stayed in the city throughout June 11th when the World Cup actually begins in Mexico City, the accommodation and airfare prices, and more importantly, the eye-gougingly expensive $3,000 price tag for a seat to watch the World Cup opening match, it definitely put a damper on that. Regardless, we still had a fun time in the city, and I would definitely love to go back again someday. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was our time in Mexico City. Have you been to CDMX, or much less Mexico? Comment below and let me know. So while I'm here, I thought I'd actually show you guys the Spanish copy of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms that I actually picked up, and at first you might be thinking like, what the heck, that's just the cover for the TV show, but remove the slipcover and you get the actual beautiful purple horse cover with golden shield cover here for A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I haven't read it quite yet, but I took a look through it, just kind of tabbing through it. And yeah, it's pretty much the version of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms that you all come to know and love, with all the pictures here, except that it's in Spanish. And one thing that's actually pretty interesting about this cover version of the book is that the Spanish that is located within this book is a very kind of Spaniard type of Spanish, a Castellano Spanish, which is interesting because the front page of this book says that it was published in Mexico through a Mexican publishing house. So I'm thinking that potentially the translation was done in Spain, and then from there it was kind of exported to all the Latin American countries and other Spanish-speaking countries so that Spanish-speaking people can read a very Spanish style book. But regardless, I'm still pretty excited to delve into it. I mean, it's going to be the exact same book that I previously read, only in Spanish as opposed to English. But yeah, this just is a really beautiful book. I'm super happy that I got it. And it once again puts the American cover versions of these books to shame because, man, the US cover versions of virtually every book I've ever read is so much more bland compared to the cover versions that exist out there for books in other countries. But muchas gracias to all of you for watching this video. I truly do appreciate each and every one of you. Like, comment, and subscribe to watch more book content here on the Advocate channel. And until next time, the Advocate, out.